All right, everybody, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going back to the 80s
To the 80s.
to take a look at a really unexpected connection, one that honestly I never would have considered. It's the link between junk bonds and spreadsheets.
Really?
Yeah, spreadsheets.
Wow. Okay.
Specifically, we'll be looking at the rise of Michael Milken.
The junk bond king.
Yeah, and the junk bond ping, exactly.
Had Drexel.
Drexel Burnham Lambert.
Right.
And how his success was tied to, get this, VisiCalc.
VisiCalc, the OG spreadsheet software.
Yeah, that's the one. Created by a guy named Dan Bricklin.
Yeah.
So to understand how this all went down,
Yeah.
we got first go back in time before spreadsheets even existed.
Back when financial analysis was a slow and, let's be honest, pretty painful process.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Bond traders back then, they had to rely on these infrequent reports from research departments.
So they didn't have the data at their fingertips.
No, not at all. And these reports would be static, just a snapshot in time, like trying to navigate a constantly changing market with an outdated map.
That's a great analogy.
It was a world of limited information, and decisions were made at a snail's pace. Then comes Dan Bricklin, a Harvard Business School student who got tired of these tedious calculations like most of us would.
Tired of the grind.
Exactly. He had this aha moment while looking at old production scheduling methods used in manufacturing. He figured, hey, why not adapt this for the new personal computer? And bam, VisiCalc was born, the first ever spreadsheet software.
I mean, it's hard to overstate just how revolutionary that was.
Oh, absolutely. It was a game changer.
Now, here's where Michael Milken enters the picture. Always the shrewd operator, he was one of the first to see the potential of PCs.
And of VisiCalc.
Especially VisiCalc. Imagine him in his office in Beverly Hills, sitting at his, I guess it was famous, X-shaped desk.
The X-shaped desk, it's almost legendary now.
Right, and his whole team is there with him, all plugged into these, at the time, newfangled computers.
Cranking away on VisiCalc.
Yeah, but hold on, before we get too caught up in the image, we need to understand why VisiCalc was such a big deal.
Well, it wasn't just about speed, although that was a huge factor.
Okay, so what else was it?
It was about having this incredible foresight. For the first time ever, you could model different financial scenarios.
So like, run simulations.
Exactly. You could stress test assumptions and quantify risk with a level of precision that was just unheard of before.
That's wild. So they weren't just reacting to the market anymore, they were like anticipating it.
Precisely. And this one feature, the what-if analysis, was revolutionary. Milken could instantly see how, say, a change in interest rates would affect the value of a bond.
I see, so they can make decisions on the fly.
Yes, and data-driven decisions instead of waiting for those old, static reports to come in.
This is incredible. But how does this all connect to junk bonds? I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not exactly a Wall Street whiz.
No problem at all. Let's break it down. So-called junk bonds are also known as high-yield bonds.
Okay, a high yield, that sounds better.
They are, but they are also seen as riskier.
Riskier how?
Well, they have a higher chance of default.
What does default mean?
It means the borrower doesn't pay back the money they borrowed. Think of it like lending money to a friend who might not be so reliable about paying you back.
Got it. So higher risk, but also potentially higher rewards.
Exactly. And this is where Milken, with VisiCalc, comes in.
He could see those potential rewards.
Yes, he could assess that risk faster and more accurately than anyone else could at that time. It gave him a huge advantage.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. VisiCalc allowed Milken to really understand the junk bond market.
Yes, it was a whole new world. Now, before VisiCalc, these bonds were seen as too risky for most investors.
Right, but Milken saw it differently.
He saw the potential. With VisiCalc, he could crunch the numbers, model different scenarios, and convince investors that these high-yield bonds were actually good investments.
So he was able to sell these junk bonds that nobody else wanted.
Right, and he sold a lot of them, which directly contributed to the junk bond boom of the 1980s.
Fascinating. And you said something about highly confident letters earlier.
Ah, yes, those were another part of Milken's strategy. He would issue these letters, basically vouching for the bonds he was selling. And because his analysis was often backed by VisiCalc, they were taken very seriously.
So these letters were like a seal of approval.
Exactly. Investors trusted Milken's judgment, especially when it was backed by data. His highly confident letters became almost like guarantees of success, and they had a major influence on the financial world.
So how did this lead to the big mergers and acquisitions we think of when we think about the 80s?
Well, Milken's team was working around the clock. using VisiCalc to analyze companies, identify undervalued ones, and structure deals.
So they were looking for companies ripe for a takeover.
You got it. They were looking for opportunities for what's called a leveraged buyout.
A leveraged buyout. I've heard that term, but never really understood it.
It's pretty straightforward. Basically, buy a company using mostly borrowed money.
So using debt.
Right. And a big chunk of that debt would often come from, you guessed it, junk bonds.
Wow, so Milken's expertise in junk bonds put him right at the center of all these massive deals. Absolutely. He was the key player. He could assess the risk, structure the financing, and get those deals done.
I mean, I'm thinking about some of the big 80s deals, like was RJR Nabisco one of them?
Oh, absolutely. RJR Nabisco. That was a landmark deal, one of the biggest leveraged buyouts in history at that time. It was a $5 billion junk bond sale.
$5 billion. Just, wow. And to think, it all goes back to this little piece of software, VisiCalc.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it? Who would have thought a spreadsheet could have such a huge impact?
It just goes to show how innovation can come from the most unexpected places.
Yeah, and how seemingly unrelated things can end up completely reshaping entire industries.
It really makes you think. What seemingly mundane tools or technologies today have that same potential? What could be the next VisiCalc, just waiting to be discovered and unleash a whole new wave of change? Maybe it's something we use every day without even realizing it. It's an exciting thought, isn't it? The potential is always there. It's just a matter of recognizing it and seeing the possibilities. And who knows what those possibilities might be, really. It's fascinating.
That's a great place to leave it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep diving.
Keep diving.
And keep those spreadsheets handy. You never know when they might come in handy.
You never know. Uh-huh.